Delegate. Delegate everything that you possibly can. Now, what does delegation mean? Delegation is very simple. What it means is this, is that whatever your hourly rate is, let us say your goal is to earn $50,000 a year. If you work 8 hours a day, that's $25 an hour. You got that? So you're a $25 an hour person. Now, the only way you can make $25 an hour is if you do $25 or more work. And the only way you can do $25 an hour or more work is if you take anything that can be done by anybody who earns less than you per hour, 20, 15, 10, 5, and so on, and delegate, outsource, have somebody else do it. The most valuable resource in the world today is productive time. And do not waste your productive time dropping off laundry, getting your car washed, mowing your lawn, cleaning your house. Do not waste your productive time doing things that you can hire people to do for $5 or $10 an hour. Use your productive time on tasks that are more expensive, of higher value. Delegate everything that you possibly can. In fact, its general conclusion is this, is that if you cannot delegate, if you cannot get other people to do things of lower priority for you, you cannot grow, you cannot develop, you cannot be successful. You may be successful running a shoe shine stand, but that's about the limit of it. Delegation requires one key word, clarity. Clarity. The reason people don't delegate is because they've delegated and other people have dropped the ball. But the major reason why people don't fulfill the task that you've given to them is because of lack of clarity. So when you delegate, here are the keys. First of all, think through what you want done. Write it down. Second of all, pick the right person to do it. Don't give a major task to an incapable person. Third of all, make it crystal clear what you want done and when you want it done. And fourth of all, check, review, inspect, keep on top of it to make sure it is done on time. Read something years ago, a great sign. It said that assumption lies at the root of all foul-ups. Never assume that anybody or anything will be done on time unless you check on it yourself. Okay, the next principle, number 10, is meetings. Meetings are an absolutely essential part of human life. We spend 75% of our time outside of our home and inside our home communicating with other people. It's absolutely essential that we meet. Meetings are very, very productive uses of time, but 50 to 70% of meeting time is wasted. I read a statistic recently that says that the average person spends 3 to 5 years of their life in meetings. The average business person spends 25% of their day in meetings and is wasting more than half of that time. So here are some of the keys to using meetings as an effective business tool. Number one is have a purpose for a meeting. Make sure that it's crystal clear at the beginning what the purpose of the meeting is. If you are the person organizing the meeting, when you start the meeting, you say the purpose of this meeting is. And if you are not, when you sit down, you ask the person who is chairing the meeting, what is the purpose of this meeting? You look upon a meeting as an investment. Take the time, the dollar value of the time of each of the people at the table, and look upon it as an investment of that many dollars in time. Best way to save time in meetings is what? Is don't go at all. If you can possibly avoid a meeting, don't go to it. If there's no need for you to be there, get the report on what happened later. Second thing we do when you do go to meetings is make sure that there's an agenda. An agenda is like a list. It's a track to run on. If the chairperson doesn't have a list, offer to put together a list or an agenda for them. Even if you just write it out and photocopy it, it's better than no list at all. Deal with the most important items first. When you have finished your contribution, ask if you can be excused and start and stop the meeting on time. Now, what's the biggest time waster in meetings? In my estimation, it's two things. The meeting goes off track and the conversation becomes irrelevant. Or second of all, people wait until the latecomer shows up. So here's the basic rule with meetings is always assume that the latecomer is not coming at all and start the meetings punctually. Start and stop the meetings at the specified time. Say the meeting will start at 8, end at 9, and at 9 o'clock, wrap up the meeting. Fair? Okay, that's how you handle meetings. And there's a lot more to it than that, but your skill, your ability to work well in meetings is a critical part of good time management. Number 11 is interruptions. The biggest single time wasters in the world of work within the office are interruptions. And the two major types of interruptions are telephone and walk-in visitors, people that just drop in to socialize and to talk to you. So how do you deal with these interruptions? Let's talk about the telephone first. The way that you deal with telephone interruptions is to remember this. When you were a child, the telephone was where you got phone calls from your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Today, we still are conditioned to have an irresistible urge to answer the phone. As a matter of fact, it's been demonstrated that you can get through to people on the phone that you could never get to physically because people cannot resist answering a ringing phone. You have to discipline yourself to remember that if it's important enough, they'll phone back. So here's some of the things you do with telephone calls. First of all, have your calls held. Tell somebody you're going to be in a meeting, you're going to be working, and have all your calls held for 2 or 3 hours, and then phone back all at once. The next principle with regard to interruptions is people. Most people are time wasters. That's the basic rule. Most people are time wasters. They waste your time, they waste their own time, they waste other people's time, and you have to be alert to it. So when a person comes in and they want to talk, they drop in without notice. The very fastest way to get rid of a person is to stand up when they walk in. If you stand up and stay standing up, they won't sit down. And you can lead them out by saying, there's one more thing before you go. And then just say it and lead them to the door. If necessary, and I've had to do this on occasion, a talkative person comes into my office, I get up and I start toward the door and I say, I was just leaving, and I leave. And the person follows me out and goes on somewhere to bother somebody else, and then I go back into my office. If people call and say, have you got a minute? Say, no, not right now. Could it wait till this afternoon? You know what they'll say? They'll say, sure. And 90% of cases, they'll forget why they came in the first place. So control interruptions. Interruptions and the ringing telephone are two major sources of stress in the world of work. Now, another key management principle, and in management, in time management, in personal management, this is essential. It's what is called key result areas. In other words, it is the key results that you have been hired to accomplish for your business. Even if you own your own business, you are still subject to key result areas. And the way that you find out your key result areas is you ask yourself this question over and over again. Why am I on the payroll? Why are you on the payroll? What have you been hired to accomplish? Not your tasks and activities, but what results are expected of you? You ask yourself this question. The accomplishment of what results is going to lead to my promotion? How am I going to earn more money? What results do I have to achieve in order to get a raise in salary? What results does my company expect of me? What contribution am I expected to make? And then you say, what are my key results? Another way of looking at it is to remember that every job has a series of functions. And there are secondary functions and primary functions, and they're what is called core functions. So you have to ask, what are the core functions of your job? What are the goals of your job? Now, many people say to me, well, I'm not sure. You know what the major reason for stress in the American workplace is today? Is people don't know what's expected. I would say 80 or 90% of people out there do not know what's expected. They're not sure why they're on the payroll. And here's a very simple technique for it. Go to your boss with a list of everything that you do and ask your boss to organize it in order of priority. Say what's number one, what's number two, what's number three, what's A, B, or C. Help him or her organize your list in order of priority and give it back to you. I promise you, you'll be surprised. But why is it that you absolutely have to know why you're on the payroll? It's simply this, is that you cannot perform excellently, you cannot do superior work, you cannot be promoted, you cannot get a raise unless you are doing and doing well the key things that your boss has hired you to do. Have you got me on that? Or have I got you on that? Key result areas are critical, and you have to know every single day. In fact, you know something? One of the major sources of frustration in work is to be working very hard on something and being vaguely uneasy because you know it's probably not important. So keep clear channels of communication with your boss. And if you supervise other people, have them bring to you a list of everything that they do, and you organize it in order of priority and make it clear to every person what their contribution is expected to be. Okay? The next one, number 13, is batching tasks. It's interesting that there is what is called in the world of work a learning curve. A learning curve says this. It says when you do a job the first time, it takes you the most amount of time to do it because you're learning how. The second time, it takes less. The third time, it takes less. The fourth time, it takes less. In fact, learning curve theory says that you can decrease the amount of time by as much as 80% if you do the same job over and over again over a period of time. So batching your tasks is a major time management tool. What does it mean? It means that if you're going to make phone calls, make all your phone calls at once. Have your calls held, make them all at once. If you're going to do invoices, do all the invoices at once. If you're going to do correspondence, do all the correspondence at once. If you're going to read and catch up, read everything at once. It's been found that if you do this on a regular basis, you'll get so much more done by doing it and concentrating on batches of tasks than if you did not. So batch your tasks whenever you possibly can. Imagine what most people do is they do a little bit of telephone call, a little bit of correspondence, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they have no learning curve at all. Each one takes the maximum amount of time. So batch your tasks. Put groups of tasks together at once and do them at once. Okay, the next principle is neatness. It's an interesting thing because you run into people all the time. I run into people in my office who say, it's okay if my desk is messy, I know where everything is. Now you have to understand one thing, is intelligent people, people with good memories, can very often remember where everything is. But it just means that they are using their intelligence to combat the inefficiency of neatness. Every single study that has been done says this, that if you will just clean up your work environment so it is completely neat and everything is off of your desk or your workplace except the one thing you're working on, that will increase your productivity by 20 to 40%. People have a difficult time understanding this, but I have tested it. I've worked with a messy desk, I've worked with a clean desk, and I tell you, I promise you, you will be astonished at the difference it makes. Now, how do you clean it up? Well, it's very simple. There's a very simple way of cleaning off a desk. It's called the TRAF system. The TRAF system has 4 letters. T stands for toss. Remember that in time management, your wastebasket is your best friend. So toss it out, throw it away. R stands for refer, which means it's not relevant to you, so you refer it to somebody else. A stands for action. And what you do is you take a file folder and you put it into an action folder, so it's out of the way. And F stands for file. File it away, do something with it. But before you file, always ask this question, what would happen if I didn't have this document? What would happen if I never could find this again? And if it's not particularly serious, throw that away too. Once you've done that, TRAF, you've tossed it, referred it, filed it, or put it in an action file. Once you've done that, then you start with your action file and you work through it. Neatness is important. Clean your desk, clean your workplace. Even in the kitchen, you'll find that if you take one thing out and use it and put it away, and take another thing out, you'll get far more done in a short period of time. Now, here's the rule. If you're not using it, put it away. If you're not using it, put it away. Even if you have to take the stuff off your desk and your credentials and put it on the floor, do it. Your briefcase is your workplace if you are on the road, if you're a salesperson, if you're moving around. Make sure your briefcase is neat and orderly and has everything that you need and nothing more than you need. Neatness is critical to productivity. Here's a final point. In a study that was done recently, 98% of senior executives said they would not promote a messy person, that they would not give a messy person greater responsibilities, that if you are messy, no matter how much you kid yourself, everybody around you concludes that you are inefficient, undependable, unreliable, and incompetent. And even if you do the job well, they think it's just an accident.